Let this video be an introduction to the Peloponnesian War, a conflict of tremendous importance to ancient Greece. It's occupied historians for centuries. From the perspective of the people who lived through it, the Peloponnesian War may as well have been a world war. The conflict between Athens and Sparta lasted over 20 years, and a complex web of alliances dragged almost every city-state in Greece into the fighting. It was a terrible turning point in history. It ended a period of prosperity, it intensified class hostility, and it divided the city-states of Greece. It resulted in the destruction of the Athenian Empire after 2 hard-fought decades. Before we get into the outbreak of the war, let's take a look at Athens and Sparta. How could these cities maintain this kind of prolonged warfare? You can think of Athens as the Athenian imperial democracy. Athens was the world's first democracy, and it holds a very special place in Western history.
Athens is the largest city in Attica, a peninsula north of the Peloponnesus, which is Sparta's territory. The city is surrounded by mountains, rendering most of the area unsuitable for cultivation. Athens used to be one of Greece's poorest city-states. However, because they were isolated on their mountainous peninsula that no one else wanted, they were free of the kinds of external pressures that plagued other cities. Athens was ruled by an assembly, the ecclesia, that made all policy decisions. It was an open-air meeting held upwards of 40 times a year. Every male citizen with at least 2 years of military experience was allowed to vote, participate in debates, and make policy proposals. The assembly appointed government officials and military leaders. In times of crisis, these generals could become powerful figures in their own right. Pericles is one such general. He's the guy who rose to the occasion in a time of crisis, and we're going to get into him later. The power and prosperity of the Athenian imperial democracy depended on its great maritime empire. Pictured here, the Athenian Empire can be seen spanning much of the coast of modern-day Greece and Turkey and almost all of the islands in the Aegean Sea. The Delian League, previously known as the Hellenic League, was an alliance of local city-states who banded together to defend against Persia. Athens was invited to lead this alliance, and it gradually became an empire under their command, with the smaller city-states paying tribute to Athens in exchange for protection and favorable trade arrangements. The Athenians already had the largest navy in Greece, and with the combined power of the Delian League's fleets, they could control traffic in the Aegean Sea. The fleet protected trade routes throughout the eastern Mediterranean, giving Athens access to the wheat fields of the Ukraine and the abundant supplies of fish in the Black Sea to make up for their poor agriculture at home. The Athenian navy was the best the world had ever known. Athenian sailors were highly disciplined and they were very well paid. Athenian rowers took to their oars 8 months out of the year. You just couldn't beat these guys. Not on the water, anyway. Sparta was Athens' biggest rival. It was the dominant city-state in the Peloponnesus, the southernmost peninsula of mainland Greece. The Athenians were native to their territory, but the Spartans came as conquerors. They even passed by Athens on their way to the Peloponnesus, because Athens didn't have very good farmland. The Spartans conquered the Peloponnesus, enslaving the area's far more numerous natives, the Helots, as a permanent underclass, and living off their labor without working the soil themselves. Helots were born into slavery, and the Spartan military served as a kind of police force, free to kill any Helots they deemed dangerous. Always on edge over the possibility of a Helot uprising, Sparta became a single-minded military academy and armed camp, isolated on the Peloponnesus and suspicious of contact with the outside world. Their biggest fear was that a rival could arm and encourage a Helot uprising that could plunge Sparta into civil war. They withdrew from the Delian League because they were unwilling to acquiesce to Athenian leadership. Sparta formed its own defensive alliance with other Greek cities known as the Peloponnesian League. Sparta begrudgingly accepted Athenian hegemony, but they had an important advantage of their own. Sparta had the best army in Greece. They could field more men than anyone else, and their soldiers were tough, well-trained, and highly disciplined. In fact, being a soldier in Sparta was a full-time job. They lived in the barracks with their families. Being a soldier meant dedicating your life to Sparta. Because Spartan wealth depended upon exploitation of the Helots, maintaining a professional standing army was of the utmost importance. Internal stability could only be assured through oppression. Abroad, Sparta embraced a sort of peace through strength perspective. During peacetime, the Spartan army was always drilling, always exercising. They were always at the ready to fight the next war. Their unmatched prowess on land deterred rivals from attacking and made Sparta into one of the most powerful and influential city-states of ancient Greece.